Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of Generation GC. My name is Molly Hudelson, and I am your host. Today, we're going to be talking about Anxiety, a song from Greatest Remixes, the remix and greatest hits album that Good Charlotte released in 2008. My guest today is Ashley Rayburn. Ashley lives in Detroit, Michigan, where she works at two of the city's most legendary venues, St. Andrew's Hall and The Shelter. She's a recent MBA graduate who is furthering her music goals by working marketing and promotions in local record stores and outside venues. Ashley lives for road trips with her best friends and her two pups at home. A few days ago, we talked about Let the Music Play from Cardiology, so today we are breaking it up with a non-studio album track. In a few days, we'll be back to the normal episodes, talking about a song from Youth Authority. This episode was recorded back in May, and I'm also recording this intro about 2 weeks in advance. As the name of this song suggests, Ashley and I do talk about having anxiety on this episode. If you're experiencing a lot of anxiety and you find that hearing people talk about it is only upsetting for you, then this might not be the episode for you, and that's totally okay. Come back in a few days for episode 15. But I do also know that a lot of people, myself included, often find it really helpful to hear others share their stories and their own experiences because it can make you feel less alone. It can make you feel understood and like there is hope for getting better. And as I mentioned in the intro to episode 13, making people feel less alone and making sure that people know that help is out there is something that is really important to me. And music can be a great thing to calm us down, right? When we're feeling anxious, it can be a great thing to help us get through anything in life. But I also wanted to remind you once again, and I'll keep saying this till I'm blue in the face because it is so damn important. But if you are struggling with any kind of mental illness, whether that is anxiety or depression or an eating disorder, if you have thoughts of suicide, if you're dealing with grief or family issues or abuse or domestic violence, please reach out for help. I know it can feel scary, but there is help out there. You'll hear me dive into it a whole lot on this episode, and I mentioned this on plenty of episodes, but I've dealt with anxiety for several years, and it sucks. I'm not gonna try to make it sound pretty, but I have made a lot of progress, and that feels really good to be able to say. If you need help, To Write Love in Her Arms has a great resource on their website. Go to twloha.org, click on the button that says Find Help, and they'll help you find resources in your area. To learn more about anxiety, you can visit the Anxiety and Depression Association of America at adaa.org. And if you're in crisis, I wanted to share some very important resources in case you guys are really in crisis right now. The first is the crisis hotline, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. There's also the crisis text line, 741-741. Domestic violence is something I've thought about lately. It's unfortunately been, for a lot of people in quarantine, that's become a big issue, right? Because you're stuck at home, you can't really move. So the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. And finally, the Trans Lifeline. That is a hotline for and operated by transgender people for trans people in crisis, and that number is 1-877-565-8860. So these numbers that I've listed are all in the US, but if you're outside the US, one resource that I would recommend is 13reasonswhy.info. Yes, that is created by the people who are doing the Netflix show 13 Reasons Why, and it's actually a really great directory of resources all around the world. So if you're outside the US, go to 13reasonswhy.info, and that'll list resources in the US too, but it also, if you're in another country, you can go there and they will help you find resources in your country. So that's really great too. I also wanted to remind you guys once again, go to blacklivesmatter.card.co for information on how you can help in the Black Lives Matter and anti-police brutality movement. There's information there on protests, on ways you can donate, petitions you can sign, and how you can educate yourself. Finally, Generation GC stickers are coming! 2 ways you can get a sticker if you want one. Number 1, support the show on Anchor. That helps me sustain the show and just have the right equipment to make the episodes sound great. And it also helps me do things like print stickers and get them mailed to you guys. Number 2, you can donate to any organization listed at blacklivesmatter.card.co. I thought that'd be a good way to encourage you guys to make a donation. Any amount, I don't care. I just want to see that you're doing something. Then send me a screenshot of your donation or your support of the show on Anchor and your mailing address. Just shoot me a DM, Twitter, Instagram, Generation GC Pod, or email generationgcpod@gmail.com, and I will mail you some stickers. This has been another pretty long intro, but it was really important to me to come on and share resources as well as give people a heads up on the content of this episode. Thank you all for tuning in, and now on to our episode. All right, so we are talking about Anxiety. Anxiety is track 2 on Greatest Remixes, which is a collection of remixes of basically some of Good Charlotte's greatest hits and a few new tracks and some reworked tracks that they released in 2008 on Epic Records. It is kind of a rare song in that sense, so if you haven't heard it before, that's okay. There was, I'm sure you know this, Ashley, but there was also a Greatest Hits album that was not remixed that was released in 2010.
I do. I don't think many people actually know that it exists, though.
Yeah, well, and I don't think the Greatest Hits got a whole lot of push. Well, the Greatest Hits, first of all, there was like no new content on there and like no remixes or B-sides or whatever. And I think it was something the label kind of put together and not the band. The band wasn't like, oh, let's do this. The label was kind of like, oh, let's put this together and put it out.
I feel like that would be a pretty accurate assumption on that part, especially with it being kind of right on the verge of hiatus.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is our first episode talking about a song from Greatest Remixes. I mean, we've mentioned, we mentioned the Little Things remix on that episode, etc. But this is, the first new Greatest Remixes song. So we're going to dive into it more. Ashley, when you heard Greatest Remixes in 2008, because I'm assuming you heard it when it came out, what was your first thought on it?
It was different. I was actually 18 at the time, so it was a tumultuous time in my life to begin with. But honestly, now that I'm older and I look back on it, because I loved Los Angeles Worldwide, Anxiety. I loved the new songs on that. But it was kind of a perfect fit at that same time. Just like Good Morning Revival, I think perhaps the Greatest Remixes album was ahead of its time, and it can be appreciated more now because now you look in the music industry and there's remixes that are going platinum and beyond.
Yeah. So I love Good Morning Revival. At the time, loved it for how cohesive seems like an odd word, but it felt very clear of this is the sound we're doing, and here's how we're going to vary things within that. We'll have fast songs, slow songs, more dancey songs, and here's all these songs that seem to come from the same sort of place, right? And I knew what I felt like they were going for. When I heard Greatest Remixes, I did not like it. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to link it. But if anyone wants to take it upon themselves to look at Amazon reviews of this album, you can see my Amazon review of Greatest Remixes. Yeah, it's I didn't like it, and it just didn't feel cohesive. I think you're right, Ashley, that in that sense, yeah, nowadays there are remixes that are going platinum, but I think it was jarring for me going from Good Morning Revival that was so cohesive and had this whole vibe throughout it, and then you have this, which just felt disjointed to me. But within that, I point out in said Amazon review that I like the song Anxiety. And I think Los Angeles Worldwide is really fun too.
Definitely. And it's such a positive spin for that time too, that I immediately connected with Los Angeles Worldwide, because it was such a positive track in their catalog that we hadn't fully seen before. But then you go right into Anxiety, which is nice too, because it's kind of the vulnerable classic Good Charlotte that we could easily relate to.
Well, and Los Angeles Worldwide is funny, I think, because, I mean, Good Morning Revival is all about being in Hollywood and in a lot of sense being like pretty effing miserable. But then you have Los Angeles Worldwide that is like, hey, look, I made my dreams come true, and that's pretty effing cool.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I would count it as 4 unreleased songs on this album: Anxiety, Los Angeles Worldwide, Fight Song, and War. Even though Los Angeles Worldwide is like a spin-off of Waldorf Worldwide, it's a new song.
Yeah, I think it counts as a new song for sure.
Yeah. Ashley, how much do you remember about the lead up to this album? Because I do not remember a big build up in terms of like press or promo for this, and I couldn't find much as I was searching. Like, am I not remembering anything?
I don't remember much other than the fact that I definitely ordered a merch bundle off the Good Charlotte website, because I still have the Disco Skull shirt in my collection.
Wait, will you send me a picture of that? Because like, I want to see that, and that sounds really dope.
I will. It's literally just the Disco Skull by itself, but I remember ordering that. It was this summer after they did the soundtrack of your summer tour, so I just don't know if because it was fall when it was released that it just wasn't pushed as hard, because it was right by the holidays too.
Yeah, it came out around, and we'll talk about the release date in a little bit and some other events around that time. It came out like that fall, and I got it as a Christmas present.
It's always a good Christmas present to get Good Charlotte, so.
Oh yeah. I don't think they've ever played this live. I did not see any videos. I didn't find any records of them playing it live. But, I could be missing something, but I don't think they've ever played it live.
I have never heard or seen any type of footage.
Yeah.
I would love it.
Oh, I would love it too. I mean, if once it's safe to do so, if Good Charlotte wants to just do like a series of shows where they only play like the deep cuts they've never ever played live,
a B-side acoustic tour would be a dream.
Oh, I would so be there. And on that note, I don't know if this is true, and I don't remember if I actually read it somewhere or if I'm like making this up in my head, but I feel like this song is a Good Morning Revival B-side, quite likely. I don't think that's like fact or confirmed necessarily, but I feel like that's where this my like feeling and knowing the timelines and stuff, as well as the content of this song, my feeling is that this was made in the time of Good Morning Revival.
That makes perfect sense, especially when you said you were looking at Good Morning Revival about like how much Hollywood and everything like that can eat you alive. It would be a perfect track to be on there. Exactly. And the music fits in perfectly.
Exactly. And Don Gilmore, who did Good Morning Revival, was also credited on this song. So that was, because I was looking that up today, and I was like, oh, okay. So I feel like it probably was.
It would be interesting if they could confirm or deny that.
I know. But that's, kind of like why I wanted to do this podcast was like, obviously there's so many like insane detailed questions about like all of the B-sides and the songs like this from Good Charlotte that I want to talk about. And I of course would love to have any member of the band. I would love to have Don Gilmore or any other producer they've worked with on the show.
That would be incredible.
But I'm also not going to force Joel Madden to, sit here for 46 hours as I, ask hundreds of questions. I was like, yeah, but that's why, like, it's fun. It makes it fun to talk with different fans and get like so many different perspectives. That's been a lot of fun.
It is, because music is so, everybody has a different perspective and how they read into things. So that's what I love about this podcast too.
Yeah.
Is you're getting to see so many points of views about people loving the same thing, but it's so different.
Yeah. And we just had an episode. So listener, Ashley and I are recording this May 28th. And yesterday we had an episode go live of Shadow Boxer, and me and my guest for that episode, Emily Burke, we did not necessarily see exactly eye to eye on the song. So that was like a really fun discussion.
It is. It's kind of like if you're brave enough to discuss religion or politics.
Yeah.
It's so crucial to go in with an open mind and understanding that it is okay that people see differently than you.
Yes.
And it's kind of beautiful, especially when it comes to something about music, because it's such a personal thing.
Exactly. And on that note, Ashley, I mean, we'll dive a ton into this song, Into Anxiety, but I really want to help our listeners get to know you. So the first question I love asking my guests is, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them? Like, were they an immediate favorite, or did it take some time?
I was pretty young, so I was 11 years old, which would have been 2001.
Okay.
And the first memory that I have of Good Charlotte is just a quick glimpse. It wasn't like a deep attraction right away.
Mm-hmm.
But I was 11 years old on vacation in Canada, and I was with one of my best friends, and we were being obnoxious and loud in a hotel room, staying up till like 2 a.m. And we were watching Much Music on the TV. And all of a sudden, I didn't know it then, but it was the Little Things video that came on. And immediately I looked at my friend and I was like, oh my gosh, those pants are the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Wait, so which pants are we talking about?
We're talking about Benji's plaid pants.
Yes, yes, which we talked about in the Little Things episode. Those are great pants.
I asked my mom when we got home if we could go to Hot Topic. But that was, and like we were just sitting there, like, and it was a cool song. Like, we didn't fully pay attention to it, but I loved the pants and the vibe. And we were jumping from bed to bed, and eventually got in trouble for it, but it was worth it.
I love it. To sidetrack a little bit, I got into Good Charlotte, it was like early 2003. So like a little bit after Young and the Hopeless came out. And not long after that, I went on a family vacation to Canada where we heard Simple Plan on Much Music. And I had never heard of Simple Plan. That was my first time hearing of them. And I told my dad to turn the TV off. And then like 6 months later, I, discovered Simple Plan again and also loved Simple Plan. So I think the lesson learned is that everyone should pay attention to Much Music.
Exactly. Much Music is amazing.
Yeah.
Or it was.
So was that like your first kind of foray into getting into music?
It was. Growing up as a younger kid, though, like one of my favorite things was just when my mom and I would get time alone, we would drive around just to get out of the house. And while she loved 90s country and Selena, I mean, I still do now just for the nostalgia factor. Like, I love going and listening to 90s country like Shania Twain and Garth Brooks just because it reminds me of my mom.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really started to get into music seriously. It was unfortunately after my dad left us.
Mm-hmm.
I was 10 at the time, and like it took me a while to process everything. So between the ages like of 11 and 13, I really started to get into music. I would go to my grandparents' house and just listen to their Motown albums for hours. And I was starting to realize that this was the beginning of music helping me cope with my emotions and how to deal with things.
And Good Charlotte, you know, I think as anyone knows, clearly has so many songs that deal about their family experiences with their dad. So did that give you a lot of comfort?
Absolutely. It was after The Young and Hopeless, and actually a little bit later than that. So probably into early 2003 as well. I remember being at my friend's house and we would just blast Story of My Old Man all the time because they knew what it meant to me.
Yeah.
And I think throughout the years, that's what's really like drawn me to that, because actually my dad left us right after Christmas as well.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So it's like that weird connection that it's like, this is someone telling their story, being brave enough to tell their stories about the struggles they've had, that I felt, okay, I'm not as alone as I feel. And it was so comforting to know that and to have that to listen to. And also be, get angry about, as I did as a teenager as well.
As teenagers do. And now, Ashley, you just graduated with an MBA. Congratulations. That is so incredible. You're welcome. How has music played into your career goals? And what's like the ultimate dream job for you?
Music has just been entwined in every part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Since I was a young kid, and I'm now 30.
Mm-hmm.
And just last year, I started working at a music venue, and it's completely changed my life in the most positive direction. Like, it's not financially stable, but it is the best thing I've ever done in my life, and I have no regrets. And I am so ready to get back to work.
Oh my God, yeah.
But music is just, I've always wanted to be around music because it's an escape. It's such a positive emotional connection for me that if I could do anything in the music industry, I would. And my MBA is actually in marketing. So I think my dream job would be creative marketing for bands. I've always been kind of the quiet art kid who loves to draw, and like my mom would always tell me I have a quick wit. She wouldn't say it in such a nice way, but I love like coming up with slogans and campaigns. So I would love to do like creative merchandise marketing with like bands. You see so many bands these days too who are really venturing out there with what they offer with merchandise and how they do it. And I think that's an incredible thing. And as a consumer of much merchandise in my life, I
You're the
feel
expert.
like a fan does offer like a unique perspective that some people may not have to offer.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds like you're passionate and excited about it as I am. What kind of stuff are you doing working at venues there in Detroit?
I will pretty much do anything that they let me do, but
you're like, just want to learn everything.
Yes. Like, you need help with this? Sure, let's do it. No problem. But with that, got hired in and I mostly do box office. So I run show nights and sales. But I also started verging into some operations as well, where we do tickets and kind of front area security as well.
Very cool. So favorite show, what is your favorite show that you've worked?
There's so many. We have had some of the best bands play at our venue in just the short year that I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could pick just one, but we have had Chase Atlantic water parks, 2 nights of Taking Back Sunday for their 20th anniversary tour.
Yeah, that's cool.
We just had Motion City Soundtrack in January, and we just had The Used in February, and it was incredible.
So you get a lot of good shows.
We do. We are a rather historic venue in Detroit, and it's really intimate, but that's why a lot of people, like, Taking Back Sunday could obviously play some of our much bigger venues, but they, for the past decades, they've been playing only our venue in the city.
I love that. That's so great.
It's exciting.
So, Ashley, a couple little tidbits I have about you. You have 25 Good Charlotte tattoos. Is that number still correct?
That is correct for now, but quarantine has me designing new ones.
I love it. Tell me about, I mean, you don't have to go through all 25 of them, but I mean, tell me about some of these tattoos. Like, which was the first one?
The first one, I was 17, and it was just the GC logo on the back of my neck.
Love it.
And I might have got it done in my house.
You know.
But it happens. I have almost 60 tattoos probably altogether now. It's a very, like, therapeutic art form for me.
Totally,
and every Good Charlotte tattoo I have has some form of lyrics wrapped around it. Even the old GC logo, I put lyrics around it.
I love that.
I think 2 of my favorites, I have the artwork from Chronicles of the boy chained to the robot.
Yeah.
And I actually put war lyrics with that. So we've got the best hearts, but we've got sick minds.
I like that.
And that was in reference to, like, always feeling chained to my mental struggles.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
I loved that one. And
it's like a mashup too of, like, two
because it's 2 of my favorite things. Like, Chronicles is incredible. And even just the war track alone was beyond words, honestly.
Oh yeah.
And then I have the cover of The Young and Hopeless, so the album cover, because I always thought that was, like, the coolest.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first CDs that I ever went to the store and bought by myself. So it, like, the cover itself was important to me. And then I put Wondering lyrics with that. So it says, "You're somebody that I found just in time."
Oh, I love that. That's really fun. So you have also been to 127 Good Charlotte shows. That's so many. Like, I've seen them, I think it's close to 20 times now. 127 is so many. That is so awesome. So, again, we don't have to go through all 127. That might be like another bonus episode. I'll also do with Ashley and be like, okay, Ashley, well, we're going to go through all 25 tattoos and all 127 shows. What was the first time you saw Good Charlotte, and what's the farthest you've traveled to see them?
The first show was in my hometown of Detroit, and it was September 30th, 2003. So the Young and Hopeless tour with Messed in Something Corporate.
Ugh, I'm, like, so mad I didn't go to that.
We had been trying to let them go to let us go to the Honda Civic tour, but at 13 they said it wasn't okay for us. So we fought for months, and then finally in September, my friend's dad bought us tickets if somebody else's parent would take us. So we bargained our way to the State Theater in Detroit.
I love that.
Actually, they did back-to-back shows in Detroit for that tour.
Oh, wow.
And they told us absolutely not. We can't go to both. But I called in and won tickets from the radio station.
Yes.
So they ended up taking us. And I actually skipped my sister's Sweet 16 to go to that show.
I love that. I love that. I would have done the same. It's fine. And then farthest.
It was worth it.
And then, I'm sure. And then what's the farthest you've traveled to see Good Charlotte?
The furthest as of right now, let's see, in 2019, we did the first half of the European Generation RX tour.
Very cool.
So the furthest we went would have been Vienna in Austria.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
It was a beautiful city.
Okay, and then the last question on this before we dive into anxiety. What is your best memory from a Good Charlotte show?
This was a hard question.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's definitely so many incredible memories because each show is so unique and different, from the crowds to the venues. But I would have to say that my best memory ever would be the comeback show at the Troubadour.
Oh my God. Yeah. I didn't go to that, and I wished I had. I was like, I should have just, put it on my credit card and just done it.
It's something I will never forget. Just the feeling. We had all been waiting so long for this. The room was so tiny. I think it holds like 250 people.
Yeah, it's like 200 or 300.
And it was just like electricity in the air. And I'm pretty sure I remember them coming out to the Game of Thrones soundtrack.
Oh my God.
And we got to see John Feldman in a really nice suit crowd serve.
That is fantastic.
So the whole night was it was a dream. I'm pretty sure I cried as soon as they walked on stage too, but
I would have too.
That's to be expected.
The first time I saw them after hiatus, I cried.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into anxiety. Ashley, you had reached out to me back in March. You're friends with Kelly Zeller, who was on the most recent episode of the show. And I told her, I was like, Kelly, I know you have a lot of friends that love Good Charlotte as much as you and I do. Tell them about this podcast. So you reached out. You had this whole list of songs, which, by the way, if I was reaching out to someone about their Good Charlotte podcast, I would have done the same thing. I would have been like, I will talk about any of them. One of those songs was Anxiety, and I was very excited because I love this song too. Why did you want to talk about this song in particular? I mean, what sticks out to you about Anxiety?
Anxiety for me, while it's still probably one of the lesser known GC songs, I feel like it's the most universally relatable song almost from their entire catalog. Anxiety is such a common emotion for so many, whether it's like relationships, work, life events, or yourself.
Yeah.
I also really love the music behind the lyrics.
It's kind of like creepy almost.
It is. And I just
I feel like I'm in a narrow hallway and someone's chasing me down the hallway, and this is like the soundtrack.
That's what's great about it, is like it fits the story that it's trying to tell. And sometimes you'll listen to music and it has a disconnect.
Right.
But this was so perfect.
That can also be a really cool thing, by the way. Like Paramore's After Laughter album, I think it's a good example of an album that has that disconnect, but is also like a great album.
That's true. I really love the album.
Yeah.
Sometimes the juxtaposition is needed.
Yeah.
Because it's still making a point in itself.
Yeah. But you're right that this song, the lyrics and the music fit together super well. So I want to talk about what this song means. I want to hear, Ashley, what do you think this song is about?
When you first listen to it, and for how I saw it for a lot of years, was that it was about a relationship with somebody else and kind of failing from communication.
Yeah.
But as I went through the rest of my teen years into my 20s, I started to really listen to this song more. And with the state that I was in, for me, it started to emphasize the relationship with myself.
Okay.
And being anxious and battling with myself. And fighting to have a positive relationship, but just kind of drowning in self-doubt. There's a specific set of lyrics that made me think about this, and kind of when I would look in the mirror, this is how I always felt.
Okay.
And the way that they worded it is how I took it.
So which lyrics?
It's, and I'm underwater and I hate you. What you're doing to me. Your voice is cold. Your eyes look through me.
Yeah.
Like they don't know me. So for me, that was me taking this song and applying it to how I was struggling with myself. From appearance, from understanding myself to where I was. Because my worst anxiety in life is actually not knowing something. So to feel like I didn't know where I was going in life, it just felt like it was constantly a battle.
And that whole not knowing thing has been really driving my anxiety lately. Like, you know, clearly not knowing what's going on with the state of the world. I'm very lucky and very grateful to have a job in music where I'm able to work from home. And, you know, so my income, my livelihood hasn't been affected, but clearly a whole lot of things have. And, you know, it's very, very tough not knowing. Because I'm a planner. Like I have color-coded spreadsheets. I have like detailed notes for this podcast. I have all these reminders on my phone, and I have a calendar on my wall. But Ashley, I actually had kind of an opposite journey with this song. So when I first heard it, and this is like why I love talking to people about it, right? And why this is not just like me solo for every song. When I first heard this song, and for a while it was because this song came out around the time, maybe within a year after I started struggling with anxiety for the first time. And I think at first, at least what it was to me, was a lot of that, like what you were saying, Ashley, about this is like struggling with my relationship with myself. And again, maybe this kind of patterns what happened in my own life, but now I've come to see it a little more about, you know, the breakdown of communication in a relationship and how that leads to anxiety. You know, that not knowing what someone is thinking since they're not communicating that to you. And yeah, that like, they're not going to tell you what's wrong. And like deep down, you know that something is wrong. And there's all this tension, but like, what can you really say? What can you really do? Because they're not saying anything. And that line, it's too late for resuscitation, I kind of take that as, like, at a certain point, there's just never going to be trust. I think ultimately this song is both, right? Like, you can take it as this is about, you know, a failing relationship, or you can take it as about your relationship with yourself and however that means.
Definitely. And that's what I love about music, is that there's so many different ways to view it. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes along with kind of where you are in your own life.
Oh, completely. And that's, and I say this on probably every episode, but like, that's what's so fun about this podcast is like almost every episode or song, I have something to say now at 28 years old that I didn't necessarily have to say about it when I heard the song, because of who I am now and the life experiences I've had since then.
It changes as you grow, and that's why I love it when artists actually take a risk and change, because you can see that they're growing and changing as people. If somebody stays the same over a span of 20 years, I would maybe question that. Right.
I mean, I you know, people have said many things about how Good Charlotte has, quote unquote, changed over the years, but I don't think any album that they've put out, like no two albums have sounded the same.
No, and I think that's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So the only thing, because I did a lot of Googling and searching, and I always do for interviews and such, and like what the band has said about the song. And all I found was on songfacts.com that Joel said to Billboard magazine of this song, "We wanted to give our fans a new song. It's actually one of my favorite songs we've ever written. I like the vibe." I couldn't find that Billboard interview online, so that either might have been something behind a paywall on Billboard online, or it could have been Billboard print. But like, I'm just like, damn it, like I couldn't find anything that the band has really said about this song.
It's hard. I feel like overall this album and a lot of the tracks are kind of forgotten.
Yes.
So it would be interesting too if like we ever got to revisit it one day and just go through like all of the B-sides to see like what the overall view on those is now too, because as you change and age, like music becomes different.
Yeah. And I'd be curious to hear what they say now about maybe a song like this, right?
This is a perfect quarantine song.
Yes. Anxiety's rough. It's, you know, I think a lot of people are feeling anxiety right now. Let's get into that. So a couple weeks ago, you all heard an episode where I talked to Casey Crawford from the band Virginity about the song Screamer. And Casey and I had a really intense discussion about like life and philosophy and psychology and such. And at the end, I was like, wow, I got to use my psychology degree. I have a bachelor's of arts in psychology. And now I'm going to put on that hat again, sort of. Anxiety sucks a lot. Your thoughts will lead to physical symptoms that make you feel like you're really in danger, which just makes you more scared. And that can take the form of panic attacks. It can take the form of social anxiety, specific phobias, or generalized anxiety disorder. And I did want to read some symptoms of anxiety from the Mayo. Is it Mayo Clinic or Mayo Clinic?
I think it's Mayo.
Yeah.
From what I've heard.
So I did want to read some symptoms of anxiety from the Mayo Clinic because I didn't, as much as I'm like, okay, this is stuff that I remember, I didn't want to forget anything. I didn't want to leave anything important out or, pull anything out of my ass. And I'll link to this because when I'm sharing about something really important like this, sharing resources, I want you guys to have access to the accurate information too. So feeling nervous, restless, or tense, having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom, having an increased heart rate, breathing rapidly, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, trouble concentrating or thinking about anything besides what you're worried about, trouble sleeping, gastrointestinal problems, difficulty controlling worry, and having the urge to avoid things that trigger anxiety. Which that last one to me is like, someone who struggled with anxiety a lot over the years, like that I think is kind of the worst part, is like knowing that certain things might make you anxious and then just getting anxious about having to be in that situation. And so you're just like anxious about experiencing another anxiety attack. And then like what was once an isolated panic attack, then it becomes just like more all-encompassing. And it's not good. It's rough.
It's true. It's an absolute vicious circle of anxiety breeding anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fun at all. And everybody experiences it so differently too.
Yes. People do experience it differently. Like it can get either really quiet or like really just irritable. And some people get more angry, or they're more talkative, or they're like visibly hyperventilating. So it's important to, I think, pay attention to yourself and to those around you to check in with people. I'll read some risk factors from the Mayo Clinic on anxiety, as well as what they suggest to prevent it. So for risk factors, trauma, which clearly I think we're all dealing with right now, whether it's direct or for most of us pretty indirect, it's still like a stressful experience. Stress due to an illness, stress buildup, again, I think something many people are dealing with just due to how their circumstances have changed right now. Personality, other mental health disorders, having blood relatives with an anxiety disorder, drugs or alcohol. And then in order to prevent, they suggest getting help early, staying active, and avoiding alcohol and drug use. Anxiety, I should note that, we've both, Ashley and I have been talking about how much it sucks and how common it is, especially right now, and how this song is a great fit for right now, but treatment is absolutely possible. I am not going to pretend like I have no anxiety anymore, because that is not true. I still get anxiety, and like how it's manifested in the last couple of years for me in the worst way is trouble sleeping. Because if you don't sleep well, you are just like so non-functioning. But treatment, taking care of yourself is absolutely possible.
It is. And I feel like anxiety is something that will be a lifelong issue. But if you can find ways to at least help manage it, it's an entirely new world. And it may take you 2 years, it may take you 30 years to get there. But definitely trying and kind of, it's like you have to face your fears head on, because there's no escaping it.
Yeah.
But you can try to quell it a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like, I think with anxiety specifically, you kind of need a twofold approach of like, okay, what am I going to do to calm myself down in the moment? And then how am I going to prevent it? And back to our lovely friends at the Mayo Clinic, they suggest, of course, psychotherapy, usually cognitive behavioral therapy that, helps change your thought patterns, as well as medication, which there's a few different types of medications that some are more as needed, some are, maybe take this every day. But they also list a lot of lifestyle and home remedies. So keeping active, avoiding alcohol and recreational drugs, stress management and relaxation techniques, such as meditation and yoga, making sleep a priority, and eating healthy. So generally good things that I think anyone can do to take care of themselves.
Absolutely.
I was always the person that said, yoga, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't no, like it's so, just let me like stretch and like blast music. Okay. But guess what I have now been doing for like almost 2 years pretty consistently, because I had a time in my life where nothing else was like working. And I figured, what do I have to lose by putting on a 15-minute yoga for relaxation video from youtube.com?
Exactly. If you don't, it's worth a shot. If you can at least try something that could potentially calm you in some way, shape, or form, go for it.
So I want to talk a little bit about, I just mentioned yoga, but I want to talk a little bit about what helps us with anxiety.
Music has always been my number one. It is the backbone of calming myself down, whether it's just going to a show, putting music on, putting my headphones in and laying in a hammock. It's always been my number one to help me calm down, because like I said earlier, having people tell their stories and realizing that you are not the only person that feels this way and deals with these struggles when you are anxious, for me, is the number one thing.
Yeah, that's so huge.
Calm myself. And I think with that, the biggest thing that I've done, and it's really only been in the past couple years and it's still not perfected, but you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You have to understand that it isn't just you. And if you open yourself up and find somebody, whether it's a therapist or a friend or your mom, to talk to not let all of that anxiety bottle up inside you even more, if you just break down those walls, allow yourself to be vulnerable, know that you need help, is the most incredible yet terrifying thing I've done over the past few years. It's
so important. To make a situation, because I've like sort of referred to this situation, to make a long and kind of bizarre story short, I got my heart broken a few years ago, and I went on a TED Talk binge after that. And that was like, around that time that I started doing yoga. but I went on like a TED Talk binge because I was just like, what is going on in my head? Why am I so sad all the time? You know, my heart was like smashed. Like it was pretty bad. And something I don't remember who said this. It might have been Brené Brown, because she's talked a lot about vulnerability, but I don't know if it was her. But I saw an interesting TED Talk. I think it was a TED Talk. It might have been another YouTube video that was suggested because I watched so many TED Talks. I watched like a couple hundred TED Talks. It was insane. But it talked about how like you need vulnerability in order to not feel lonely. Like that's why, like, right, you could be lonely in a crowded room, quote unquote, right? Because it's like all these people around, but like none of them understand you.
Exactly.
But if you like open up, that makes a big difference.
It is, and I think it's hard because I feel like a lot of people with anxiety feel that they're reluctant to open up because whether it's someone or themselves that's made them feel like their emotions are a burden to put on other people, that it terrifies them to open up and actually take that step. But I've noticed in my life, like, the hardest part is the first step. Once you're through that, it's a whole new perspective. And you can at least feel accomplished knowing that if it's not successful, you tried.
I think, and I don't like want to get into a whole discussion entirely about gender because I don't have science to back this up, but I will say from my personal experience and like how I experience the world is like, you know, if a girl freaks out about something, especially in the situation of a relationship, if a girl freaks out about something in a relationship, it's like, oh, you just need to calm down, you're being crazy. So it can be hard to feel like your anxiety is valid. So I think that's why, I mean, it's important to be vulnerable, but I think therapy can be a great tool for people because you have like a very unbiased perspective. And just doing the like lifestyle changes. And for me, like, that's been exercising regularly, maybe not so much during quarantine, but, you know, a couple times a week, you know, doing yoga, journaling, eating well. And like, that has helped remind me that I am worth it. I deserve to take care of myself. I deserve to feel good. And I'm not a bad person because I, you know, have certain struggles and worries, and I am actually capable of doing a whole lot of things.
Absolutely. No one in this world is allowed to tell you how you are feeling something or experiencing something because they don't know.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, that's why I think you do have to just be open but consistently communicate, right? Not make it an ongoing conversation, I think.
Exactly. If there's no communication, it's never going to work.
Exactly. So I want to talk about, you know, we can talk about some memories of this song. But Ashley, I'm sure you saw this in my notes. This song makes me think of Twilight.
I love that, though.
Right. So, to be fair, to my credit, the first Twilight movie came out the same week as this album, right around when I was reading the books. So, like, my Christmas present that year, it was, like, all 4 Twilight books and this album and, like, you know, some other stuff. So, I'm listening to this album and reading Twilight for the first time and then going to see the movie. So, there's that obvious association of time, right? Ashley, have you seen and or read Twilight?
I did. I was
okay.
Like I said, I was 18 at the time, so it was right about in that age, and I just read it because I like to read.
I got them. My mom got me all 4 books for Christmas that year. Like, I hadn't asked for them or anything, but she was just like, I knew these are really popular, and like, So I was like, okay, and I like read them all like very quickly. I kind of feel like this song does relate a little bit to stuff that happens in Twilight, right? Like, by the way, I guess I'm sort of spoiling Twilight, but the book's also been out for well over a decade now, so like, it's fine. I'm also not really going to spoil anything, but Bella is in love with Edward Cullen, but he's super mysterious and very secretive, and he will just pull away from her and disappear, which like obviously gives her all this anxiety.
Exactly. I can see like the relationship aspect of this playing into that as well. Like I didn't think about it until you sent that over, but like now I'm like, I understand this. I
don't think that was intentional. I don't think Benji and Joel Madden were trying to write about Twilight. I just feel like they weren't, but maybe they were. Maybe they were. And I wonder if any other GC fans had that same idea, because I think a lot of the fans are around the age that you and I are, so they were reading Twilight as this came out. So like, I'm really curious if anyone else had that same idea.
If they didn't, they probably now will associate it with
Yes, my impact on the world. I love it.
6 degrees of separation with Twilight and anxiety.
Exactly. Ashley, do you have any like memories or stories you want to share about this song?
For me, this was just a perfectly timed song. Mm-hmm. I was 18, and that August, I started college. I didn't know anybody. I moved like 3 hours away. All 3 of my college roommates were best friends from high school and super religious. I had 3 piercings in my face, tattoos, and rock posters. I wasn't exactly fitting in there. So then a couple months in, like after it was, I think right after Thanksgiving break, and I'd gotten the CD, and I was like, well, this is just perfectly timed for how I feel right now, and trying to figure out my place in the world, figure out my place in my dorm room.
Oh yeah.
So I always think about my first college years. I only spent 1 semester on campus after that. So and then I went to online schooling. But it was just really well timed for where I was in my life.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I think it was pretty well timed for me too. Just like, I guess it would have been probably it was definitely my junior year of high school that I like first felt anxiety, because there was like, I very distinctly remember walking out of, I don't know, this would have been senior year. It would have been, there was an English presentation junior year that I like almost walked out of because I was like having a panic attack. And then there was an AP French test senior year that I did walk out of because I was having a panic attack. Well, like that was rough because I had the same French teacher the first 3 years of high school, and I loved her. Like I adored her. I'm like Facebook friends with her still. She was great. And then I did not have the same teacher for AP French.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Yeah, and so like the first 3 years of high school, French was like such a fun class. And then we get to senior year AP French, and it just like sucked and was stressful. And like, yes, it was AP, but like literally like what? Okay, so I got like a college credit for that, and that's one last class I had to take in college. But like,
it makes a difference when you are enjoying yourself in the class at the same time. School is just a ground for anxiety.
It really is, and like I kind of talked about this. I think I talked about this on the episode about Screamer, but like when I was in school, like school was weird for me, high school especially, because like English was one of my worst classes. But like I always liked to write. I didn't like the books we read in high school, nor did I like how my teachers taught like literary analysis. But like whenever I got creative writing assignments, I loved those. But like I had some English teachers who were mean and didn't believe in me, and it was
awful.
It's awful. And like that was just a weird thing, because it was like I always knew that I wanted to write like in some way and make storytelling and words a thing that I was going to do. And so it was very weird. And it definitely was not an easy time for me.
No, and I think with like standardized testing and everything like that, it's nobody learns the same.
Yeah.
So if you don't have somebody in your corner at the same time helping you learn the way that you do and being open-minded to that there's more than one way to get to a right answer.
Yes.
It's frustrating.
It's very frustrating. It's, luckily I've found a path that I'm on now, but
and you're doing great with it.
Thank you. But no, school's definitely rough, and high school was especially bad. Like, I can laugh about it now, but like, no, high school was bad. High school was not good. I do not have good memories. I have not been back. I will not go back. Period.
Same.
Yeah. Let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about some press about this song. I'll start off. My Alexa just beeped. Punk News wrote a review of this album, and they did not like this song. They said Anxiety's dance beat is almost too similar to that River song. And yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to the River, but I really think it was a Good Morning Revival B-side.
And I think it's totally fine and normal if bands have songs that lend to earlier sounds, because they're still different in their own way.
Well, and maybe that's why it wasn't on the album, because they were like, oh, it has a similar beat to the River, so we don't want something that sounds so
and it's
similar.
Still a great song to put out, so we'll find and Greatest Remixes followed Good Morning Revival, so for me it's more of a natural transition.
Mm-hmm. Reflections of Darkness liked this song. First of all, their review was inaccurate. They said one previously unreleased track, which is incorrect. But they said that Anxiety is more up-tempo and very much puts the vocals to the forefront and only has a little synth gadgetry going on. So they liked it a little more. I also found an interview from NPR where Benji and Joel talked about Generation RX, which I thought was really cool, because it's like, oh, like, if NPR is interviewing you, that is really cool. So they're talking about Generation RX, which is a great album, I think, not just because it's vulnerable, but it's very, like, introspective. It's a little less, this is what's happening to me, and more, I think, this is what's going on inside my head. So this interview is about Generation RX. It does not mention the song Anxiety, but they do mention how hard it is to talk about things like anxiety in general. So this is Benji talking. He says, I think what we've talked about as a band was, are we really honest and vulnerable with people? Because sometimes that can be hard to do when you're stepping out and putting your feelings and thoughts and experiences out there publicly. And when we went to make this record, we thought, what's the point for us to be here if we're not going to be as honest as we can? And these are hard things to talk about. It's hard to talk about childhood trauma. It's hard to talk about depression. It's hard to talk about anxiety. And we thought, I wonder if we just open up our subconscious and the things that we think about and hide from people every day and just let them come out in some of these lyrics.
I love that.
I love that. And, even though that was an interview about Good Morning Revival, or even though that was an interview about Generation RX, I felt like that was applicable to this song.
I feel like that's applicable to Good Charlotte's entire career. Like,
oh, totally.
Perhaps they were more guarded in the beginning. I don't think as much, especially when you look at other bands.
Yeah.
But for me, that's always been one of the most attractive qualities of this band and their music.
Exactly.
It's refreshing.
Yeah. It's that I think to me that they are honest and very honest about like where they are in life.
And it makes the music feel so relatable. Like, even if it's not about the same situation, this holds importance in my life for another reason.
Exactly. And I think I could just do, and like, okay, so for a short time, I had a podcast with my friend Logan White called Perspective, and we did one episode where we defended underrated albums. And one of the ones I defended was Good Morning Revival.
Super underrated and ahead of its time.
Yes, and like so fucking cool too. And it so paints a mood. There's a story, and I could like go on a soapbox and just tell what I see as like the theatrical storytelling of Good Morning Revival, like the musical that would come out of it. But I think that album was kind of bold because people will so often talk about like, oh yeah, I like moved to Los Angeles and I'm just making my dreams come true. It's great. And they're like, nah, I moved to Los Angeles and like everyone's miserable. I'm kind of miserable too. F that. Like, so I think it's like really bold in that sense, even outside of what they were doing sonically.
And just a couple years after that, into like the 2010s, like so many pop punk bands and everything were including dance and synth into their sets. So that's all I'm saying.
Exactly. No, I'm with you. I mean, I don't think I have to tell you why Good Morning Revival is an underrated and fantastic album that deserves more recognition, and that also gave me appreciation for the color orange.
Yes. And after you get your heart broken, there is nothing like being front row in a crowd screaming along to dance floor anthem.
Yeah, that first show I went to after I got my heart smashed a few years ago was very nice. It was very cathartic. It was so great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My hands are up so high. I do not want to be in love right now.
Oh no. I was like, nope. But it's great to have that soundtrack and to feel like I had something to cling to, I think.
Exactly.
To help me. Ashley, this has been so cool.
I have had so much fun. I could do this for days endlessly.
As could I. And I definitely like want to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. So are there any like big topics on this song that we haven't covered that you want to bring up?
I think we've covered quite a few. I just like, for me, the lyrics, I love it so much because the imagery
yeah.
It just makes anxiety almost understandable because it's so hard to explain how you feel. But if you tell somebody like, I'm underwater, like I'm drowning, if people have been anywhere near that case, they know what that feels like.
Yes.
And then perhaps it opens up the conversation to more understanding and the severity of what anxiety is, because I feel like it does get brushed off as just normal.
Calm down.
And calm down. You're being irrational.
Yeah.
Or it's fine. It's not that bad. But it can literally feel like you're drowning. So for me, the imagery in the song too was just so
it's great. Yeah.
Impactful. And that's what I love about Charlotte too, is like things I don't know how to properly explain. It seems like they do.
Yeah, I love that. Ashley, this has been so great. How has the song held up for you over time?
Well, I think now more than ever, this song is just
applicable.
Perfect, as we mentioned with quarantine.
Yeah.
Because even perhaps people who hadn't really been familiar with anxiety before, they're learning that, whether it's financial or being quarantined in a house with someone you love for 24/7 for months at a time.
I mean, or frankly, like I am not in this situation. I'm very happy to, have a home where I feel very safe, but people who are quarantined with someone that they do not feel safe with, like, this is a really tough time for people in, domestic violence situations.
It is. And my roommate and best friend of 15 years that I actually met through Good Charlotte.
Love that.
She suffers from chronic illness. So it's a really terrifying time for her to even, we have to go get groceries. And like, we can't risk her getting sick. So there's different levels of stress for all kinds of people and anxiety that goes along with it. And again, just not knowing where we're going or where we're headed after this.
I read a really interesting article that actually makes a lot of sense. Talking about, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember where I found the article, but it talked about how, like, if you have anxiety and, like, you actually feel kind of chill right now, that's not that weird. And I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not using my psych degree here. I'm paraphrasing. When you have anxiety, a lot of that comes from uncertainty, not knowing what's happening, not knowing what you can do. But sometimes when you are faced with, like, an actual crisis with a very clear solution, it's like, oh, I just do that and I don't have to worry because there's no uncertainty. And so right now, I think for some people, and I thought this too in some ways, that there's like so much uncertainty about the world, but also what can I do is, like, in some ways it's pretty clear. It's, you know, wear a mask when I go out, stay 6 feet from people when I have to go to the store, wash hands, sanitize my hands, you know, wipe down the counters with Lysol after I bring my groceries home, keep working, make sure I save money as much as I can, you know, and that's, like, what I can do. And other people might be doing things that I don't think are smart or that I wouldn't personally choose to do, but, like, I can't fix that. So it's like, I've definitely, like, lately I've felt like at times an interesting zen where it's like, okay, I'm doing what I can do. I am doing what I can do. And this is helping.
I can see that, though. And, like, I think that's a very positive way to focus on things right now, because at the end of the day, you are only responsible for yourself. And as long as you are comfortable and knowing that you're doing what you can to take care of yourself and most likely the ones that you love that you're close to, and try to be better right now in this time, I mean, that's a great way to see it. And it gives you something to focus on as well, not just feeling like chaos.
Exactly. So, Ashley, what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed over time?
This is like $1 million question right here. It's hard to fully explain my admiration and appreciation for this band.
Oh yeah,
they've been my favorite band for almost 2 decades now, which is 2/3 of my life.
I love that. So
throughout all my years, all the ups and downs I faced personally, I've always found myself drawn to their music. And like I said earlier, my connections have changed throughout the years and it's taken on new meaning. But I think that's such a special relationship to have with your favorite artist.
It really is.
And it's kind of a testament to GC's storytelling abilities that, for me, ultimately created like a timeless discography and this profound connection with other fans. And that's been one of the most amazing things I've gotten out of being a fan of this band. I've met people on message boards back in the day that are still my friends from 15 years ago, waiting in line, or like I met Kelly just chilling in a parking lot in Albany, New York.
I love that.
We're best of friends and we travel the world now.
Wait. So you went to those shows 2017 you went to the show in Stroudsburg in 2017, right?
I did.
Were you like with Kelly in the front row? Like, did I meet you at that show? Because I had a photo pass for that show.
Because Kelly and I, we talked, but Kelly and I weren't like super close.
Okay,
like,
you weren't like
she was. I had seen her, but I definitely was like up front, off to the side for that.
Okay, because I had a photo pass for that show, and I like got to wave. It was like a hectic evening. I like rushed over from work, like left work early, drove home to get my camera because I got confirmed that day, so I didn't just have my camera with me.
Oh no!
I like did not think I was going to get approved. Yeah. Luckily, pro of working in the music industry is my boss. I asked my boss if I could leave early to go get my camera and shoot Good Charlotte, and he was like, "Yeah, of course." but I was like rushing, and so like didn't get to like hang with anyone, but I did get to like wave to Kelly like as she was in the front row.
Oh, that's so cool. Like, it's such a weird small world when you realize that you've been going to the same shows for years.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure you and I'm sure just because you've been to so many, I'm sure we have been to some of the same Good Charlotte shows.
Definitely, I would say so.
Definitely. So Ashley, do you have any last words about anxiety, about Good Charlotte, or about yourself?
I just think overall, like, again, it's so important to allow yourself to be vulnerable and open when you're dealing with such a serious issue like anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And like, just don't be afraid to ask for help. I've been afraid for so many years, and you have to kind of take time to make sure you take care of yourself first, so you can take care of other people you love and be better, and try to figure out ways to help manage such a profound struggle that anxiety can be.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, just don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the best thing I've ever learned from both Good Charlotte, all my friends, my mom. And it, like I said, it takes a long time for people to get there, but be vulnerable, ask for help, and figure out what works for you, because it's going to be so different for everybody. But I think, especially with this song, that is just what you have to take from this. And again, I think that's why it's so important to listen to these messages and share this music that maybe isn't as well known, because it's such an important topic.
Exactly. No, this was actually, we just had such a great conversation. And I hope that this like almost feels conceited to say, but I hope that at least one person listens to this and is like, okay, I feel like I can go get help now. I feel like I can talk about it. I feel like I can, have the courage to book an appointment with a therapist. And there are a lot of therapists are doing, virtual appointments. And there's also services like BetterHelp or Talkspace that are, virtual and already very primed. I'm sure BetterHelp and Talkspace are doing quite well right now, because I think a lot of people are needing those services.
Absolutely. Because it can be hard to verbalize and talk to someone vocally. Mm-hmm. But even if you just text somebody, and be open and honest with your feelings, because if you're not open and honest, it's never gonna change. Totally.
No, that was so well put. Thank you so much, Ashley. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This has made my quarantine.
Oh my God, I'm so glad. No, this was like, starting this podcast has just been, it's been so much fun. Listeners, thank you for tuning in to our second bonus episode talking about Good Charlotte's song Anxiety from the Greatest Remixes album. A few days ago, we talked about Let the Music Play from Cardiology, so we're breaking it up with a non-studio album track. Next week, we'll be talking about a song from Youth Authority, Good Charlotte's comeback album. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Ashley, thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find you on the internet?
My Twitter is at I am Ashley Nicole.
Okay.
Instagram is ANR317. Okay. And Facebook is just Ashley Rayburn.
Perfect. And Ashley, one thing I'm doing is asking everyone for a song recommendation. So not Good Charlotte, any non-Good Charlotte song recommendation that you have. Just anything you're jamming or that you think people should listen to.
My current jam, because I like to go on drives and just get out of the house during this quarantine, is Machine Gun Kelly's Bloody Valentine.
Oh my God, honestly, I knew you were going to say that.
The title. Yes. But it is such a jam. He's always loved pop punk. I've known him for the past 10 years. He's an incredible musician, and his growth has been exponential as well. So I really love that he's really diving into this pop punk world and blending genres like he's always done. And this features Travis Barker as well. And it has resonance of such like a Blink hit.
Oh, yeah.
That it just is pure nostalgia and just such new artistry as well, that it is a perfect song to go driving, roll your windows down, and jam out.
I love that. That's going to be a great add to the Generation GC and Friends playlist that's on Spotify. Ashley, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Listeners, you can follow the show at Generation GC Pod on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can follow me, Molly, at Hudelson, MHUDELSON on Twitter or Instagram. And if you want, you guys can also support the show on Anchor. You do not have to do this, but if you choose to do so, it does help me support and sustain all the episodes, make sure that I have things like the right microphones, headphones, etc. It also makes it so that I can do things like print stickers and ship those out to you guys. And once I build up the supporters a little bit, I think about 10 supporters a month, I am going to start doing charitable donations every month. So let me know if there's any causes that you all think I should donate to. Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in.